Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a concept that is honestly a total game changer. It's called Homo Modellus, and we're going to see how actively structuring our thoughts isn't just some abstract academic exercise. It's actually the ultimate key to thriving, leading, and finding genuine fulfillment in the AI era. So, let's just jump right in.
I want to start by asking you a really fundamental question. Basically, are you just consuming the world, or are you modeling it? Think about it for a second. As you go about your day, are you just passively accepting the apps, the policies, the workflows you're handed, or are you intentionally stepping up and shaping them?
To answer that, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover modeling as a social practice, look at some real-world case studies, tackle the ethics of AI, and then wrap up with the brain science of human happiness and this idea of a whole new literacy.
All right, part one. Modeling is a social practice.
Let's completely redefine what the word modeling actually means. It's way more than, say, building a toy airplane or a financial spreadsheet. Think about the stark difference between these two things. On one hand, you have private meaning. You could have the most brilliant, world-changing idea, but if it stays trapped inside your head, well, its impact is literally zero, right? But then look at the alternative, social practice. The second you externalize that thought, maybe you code an app, draft a law, or even just write a lesson plan, it becomes a shared reality. Modeling is that physical, intentional act of taking what's in your brain and putting it into the world to actually change how people behave.
Moving on to part two, let's look at some cases where modeling actually changes society.
It's incredible to see how this plays out in the real world across totally different professions. Before they understood this concept, you had a CEO basically acting like a vending machine, just dispensing tasks. A teacher, just giving standard fun lectures. A designer, just making things look pretty. They were totally fixated on producing outputs, but the transformation is wild when they shift their mindset. They stopped just making stuff and started actively structuring the cognitive experiences of their users, their students, and their teams. They became modelers.
Let's zero in on the designer for a second, because this perfectly illustrates the point. Before, they might have just picked trendy fonts and nice colors, but here they actually observed users struggling on a financial app. They literally watched where a user's thumb hesitated or where they got confused. They took that human behavior, mapped it into wireframes, tested it, and massively dropped the app's bounce rate. They didn't just design a screen. They anticipated human behavior and smoothly guided their users' decisions. They modeled a better flow.
Okay, part three. Let's talk about the hidden ethical responsibility of all this.
Because modeling literally shapes how people think and act, we have to talk about the heavy ethical weight here. This is absolutely crucial. Modeling is not some neutral, objective technology. It is always the result of value selection. Every single time you build a model, you are deciding what matters and what doesn't. If you feed an AI algorithm biased data, you are hard-coding inequality right into the system. If you build a grading system based purely on class rank, you're prioritizing hyper-competition over actual learning. Whatever you choose to highlight or ignore is a profound choice. It can empower people, or it can seriously deepen divides.
Which brings us to part four, the AI era and the human subject. We hear a lot of doom and gloom about AI taking our jobs, right? Well, this perspective is actually incredibly empowering. Think about what AI is. It processes data, repeats rules, and calculates outcomes way faster than any human ever could. And yeah, if you try to race a machine on math, you're gonna lose. But what about human capability? This framework reframes AI as just a really efficient calculator, while positioning us, humans, as the essential modelers. The AI can solve the equation, sure, but we have to define the problem. The machine can optimize a route, but a human must set the moral direction and grasp the messy, rich context of reality that a computer just cannot comprehend.
And honestly, this is exactly why the humanities, subjects people sometimes dismiss as totally impractical, are literally your most valuable assets today. Literature builds intense empathy, helping you understand your users on a human level. Philosophy forces you to ruthlessly question your own biases before you launch something into the world. History gives you the long-term context to avoid making short-sighted, destructive choices. These aren't just dusty academic theories. They are your practical, everyday toolkit for figuring out why a problem actually matters, who it impacts, and how to solve it responsibly.
All right, part five. Let's look at the brain of a model producer and how this ties into happiness.
Let's geek out on brain science for just a second, because there's a fascinating biological loop happening here. It starts when you voluntarily explore a problem, really digging into the messy details. Then you take all that chaos and intentionally structure a model to solve it. When you do that, your brain actually rewards you with a hit of dopamine. It's amazing.
When you stop passively consuming what other people built and start structuring your own solutions, your drive completely shifts. You go from feeling external pressure to experiencing pure inner joy and a massive boost in confidence. We are literally hardwired to feel happy when we create models.
Finally, part 6. Let's talk about the limits of this theory and what it means for a new kind of literacy.
Now, we have to have a little intellectual humility here, because like any powerful tool, your modeling can totally fail if you're not careful. There are 3 big traps to watch out for. First, picking the wrong medium. You can't explain a deeply human social policy using just a cold, dry spreadsheet of numbers. It kills all the context. Second, ignoring your audience. You wouldn't use dense academic jargon to explain a public health crisis to everyday people, right? And third, the big one, ideological bias. This is when you let your own rigid beliefs warp reality, basically twisting the data to fit your personal narrative instead of modeling the actual truth.
So, what does this all mean? The absolute biggest takeaway from this explainer is that modeling is the new literacy. Think about it. Centuries ago, simply knowing how to read and write was the foundation of being a citizen. But today, in our hyper-complex AI-driven world, the new baseline is shifting from being a passive consumer to an active, responsible modeler. It is the essential skill you need to actively participate in society and actually shape the future.
Which leaves us with this final question. Now that you know you're a Homo Modellus, someone biologically and intellectually built to intentionally structure the world, what is the very first model you're going to create tomorrow? Think about a real problem in your community or your workplace. Instead of just complaining about it or accepting it, how can you step up and model a better reality? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. Keep thinking, keep structuring, and keep modeling.